Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. We are in a very appropriate setting today. We are in nature. It was really cool to walk here because I was walking with the geese and then they just started trailing into the pond here, which I thought was really cool. Oh, that was awesome. It is time for me to tell you guys a story about a vision that I had, a real vision. I've been blessed with 2 of those in my life, but this particular vision did change my life. It was unprecedented. I don't think at the time I had even been reading anything about Jung's research. I hadn't read The Sacred Prostitute yet, Eternal Aspects of the Feminine. I hadn't even indulged in that whatsoever at that point. So this vision to me had a very different significance, or a more vague significance in the beginning than it does now, of course. But I have had what I now know to have, I have had a vision where an aspect, an archetype, a form of the divine feminine had come to me in order to help me. This vision is one of the experiences that I have had that is in direct correlation to a lot of what I talk about when it comes to solitude and creation and the desire to be alone and the necessity of solitude. It comes from this instance, which is why I want to share it with you. I originally shared this vision when I first started my channel years ago, and of course, no one saw the video, so it's time for me to resurface this story for you all so that if you've had a similar experience, then you'll know that you're not alone, or that you're not crazy, or that this kind of thing can happen and that it can have significance and that it can change the trajectory of your life. So the vision that I had of the divine feminine was whenever I was in college. It was my first year of college. I had just moved out of my dorms for the first time into an apartment, and I was very, very unhappy, and I was looking for refuge within others and within a group of friends, and was going out and partying, and I felt very isolated and alone within this group of friends, and I felt like I was pushing myself too much in order to be around other people, and I wasn't getting what I needed, and it was causing me trouble in my creative life and in my social life. I have been alone for long durations in my life, and I thought that at this time, me being around others and being able to socialize like this and go to parties all the time, and I thought that was what I needed, and in retrospect it wasn't. And so it came to a point where one day I felt probably the most discarded and alone than I had ever felt in my life, and I felt ostracized by my friend group, and I felt like I didn't matter. I was supposed to go out that night, and I ended up not going, and I ended up crying a lot and being very, very upset and self-destructive that evening. And so a few days after this, I'm in the back of an Uber, and this is when the vision happens. And I was listening to some kind of music. I was trying to stay away from the rest of the people in the car, separate myself from them. And I was listening to Frank Ocean, actually. I was listening to Siegfried. And then there was a point whenever I was listening to this song that a lyric came up. I couldn't gauge your fears. I can't relate to my peers. And then out of nowhere, it was like I couldn't move. I couldn't blink. I could breathe and everything, but it was like this vision must have lasted maybe a few seconds, maybe. It felt like a long time. Time had stopped, I suppose, whenever this happened. And I was just, looking at, I couldn't move. I was just looking straight ahead of me through the windshield of the car. And in my vision, my direct vision, right here, and there was a woman, and she was made of stars. It seemed like she had been born out of like a supernova or a cosmos type situation. She was all stars, and she it was very much like, it was me and her, and it was like Gustav Klimt's The Kiss, and she was the man, and she was holding my face and kissing my face. That's what it looked like anyway, the way that her hands were positioned and the way that my head was, like really like perpendicular like this. And so this image kind of just came into my view, and it was glimmering and shimmering, and the rest of the car pretty much subsided. Like, I couldn't see anything else in the car. She held my face and she kissed my face, and it was very much that still moment like it is in the kiss in the painting. And she held me there for a minute, and I was crying, and it was a platonic kiss. It wasn't even maternal, I'd say, but it was the kiss of something eternal. It was something that was past, friendship or motherly love. It was more so just somebody was consoling me and telling me that it was going to be okay. And more so than that, this kiss was meant to signify to me that I should embrace loneliness, and that I should stop trying so hard to be around other people and to find any kind of connection to my friend group at the time, or at least stop forcing it. I, at the time, had named her like the goddess of loneliness or something like that. That's in my brain at the time, pre any kind of interpretation like that. I was like, okay, this is the goddess of loneliness. And so she's telling me by kissing me that you should fall in love with your solitude and your loneliness. It shouldn't be something you should be afraid of. It should be something that you embrace, take inspiration from. Something happens there, that there's a love, and it was self-love, really. To find that love in you first rather than in other people. Like I said, this must have lasted maybe a couple of seconds, but it felt like much longer. And after she kissed me, she let me go and everything faded away. It was really quite beautiful, and I just cried. I cried and I smiled. I had never been touched like that before in my life. I must have looked like a crazy person if somebody were to look back at me, because nobody was looking at me and everybody's looking forward ahead of them. They're talking, chatting about something. And I'm just sitting there, tears streaming down my face and smiling to myself. And that vision, from that day on, I just isolated myself. I still hung out with my friends periodically, but not like the way that I was before. And I decided, instead of trying to fill this void in me with other people, I decided to stay in my apartment, stay and be alone. And in that loneliness, I was like, okay, what do I do? I should find something to do, right? And so because I enjoy making art, I decided that's how I would fill my time, and that's what would distract me from any other need. But it wasn't even a need. Like, I didn't even have this social desire anymore to be around people or my friends, and I felt complete and total completeness and just being alone and creating. And so every single night, I'd just come back home from school or whatever I was doing, working at the time, and I would just come to my desk and I would draw, or I would pin up some paper up onto the wall, and I would do oil pastel portraits. I did actually one portrait of myself. You know how we all are, us girls, taking pictures of ourselves crying because we think we're so beautiful or whatever. But during the episode where I was very upset before this vision, I had taken a picture of my swollen face whenever I was crying, and my anger and pity. And during this time of solitude, I did an oil pastel portrait of myself, of that photo of myself crying, and I disformed and disfigured my face and all that. But that was the first real moment in my life where I took my suffering and my loneliness and I turned it into creation with the help of this otherworldly being, somebody speaking to me. This person didn't even talk, it wasn't like words were being communicated to me, because there needn't have been words. This woman came to me, caressed me, brought me solace, and said, love your loneliness, love your solitude, go inward, go into yourself. which I thought was pretty spectacular. I've never had visions like this since. I've only had 2 visions in my life, and this one, that was it. But this is just this vision changed everything for me. It was the first time that I looked at solitude as a creative space. It was the first time that I had literally come into contact with something completely otherworldly and archetypal and Jungian, like an actual divine entity had come to me to tell me something. Maybe it was myself, maybe it was a projection of my own thoughts, my own subconscious saying something, which is exactly what the divine feminine is. But I also just find it interesting that she was made of stars, like this great unknown that is space. That's what she was made of. That's the matter that she was comprised of. I just always found that to be so interesting, and it was so beautiful too. There was no lack of beauty either. It was almost like it was. It's almost like it was performed for me in a way that I would understand and that would really hit my core. And ever since then, I have regarded solitude as a sacred space. And I felt like loneliness, and I felt alone during prolonged periods of time that are not my choice. But anytime that I decide to be alone, I am very happy to be there. It's not because anybody, it's not because I feel like I'm being forced to be alone or something. I genuinely love being alone for long, long periods of time, and I'm completely okay with that. I don't need other people in the way that I used to. But this going back to solitude, this woman telling me that I should embrace being alone and embrace my loneliness, is very much what you hear in the Jungian teachings about the divine feminine, this idea of coming back to the womb, this secret place where in silence and without witness, you create just like a baby is created in the womb. Where, of course, because I hear people all the time tell me in the comments, because I can be extreme sometimes, and people are like, oh, like there has to be balance, you always have to be careful. And it's like, yes, but at this point in time, I needed to be alone. I needed to only be alone and not be around people very much. Somebody said it really well in the comments once, that too much solitude is a cult of the self, and that it's harmful. And that is where the crone and death and the destroyer come in when it comes to the fertility goddesses and the divine feminine and all that. There is death there too, which you do have to be careful. You do have to dive into the unknown, knowing that there is something there that can kill you, and that, or figuratively or literally. But this was a much needed return. I had no fear being alone in that space, or now, really. I know when to stop, and I know when to come back to people. I just found it cool. And then, a few months later, I get a book from my boyfriend. That is the book that I have referenced so many times, The Sacred Prostitute, the eternal aspect of the divine feminine. That book was given to me by my boyfriend like months later. And for people who don't understand, like my video about logic, I found people were very divided in the comments about what I was saying. And if you have read any Jungian texts, then you'll know that the intuitive and the logical are opposing forces, and yes, they do come together and they do work together. But I do think that there are moments in time where you need to go from one extreme to the other in order to find your balance. A balance doesn't just stay balanced all the time. It has to, move to and fro before anything else can balance in the middle. But this was another extreme time for me. This was another example of that extreme. I needed to go into loneliness, full stop, and just, as much as I could, being somebody who was going to college at the time. It was what was at first a very upsetting time in my life, where there was a lot of pain. I went into solitude with, out of nowhere, there was no struggle for it either. It's like I instinctively knew that I had to go into solitude and to be alone. And there was no struggle there at all. I didn't have a hard time staying away from people. I didn't have a hard time in solitude. I found things to do. It was strange. It didn't feel like that much of like a lesson that other, in the way that other lessons can be. And I found it very cool in that way, that I felt at home, and it didn't feel forced to go there. I felt like I had a woman, a mother, divine feminine or whatever, some figure in my life with their hand on my shoulder, gently leading me in the right direction. I feel like this vision was invaluable to me, so I wanted to share it with you all, and I hope you guys have also had such visions, because this was like life-changing to me. I could not believe that I was able to receive such a thing, because visions, not everybody believes that those things happen, but real or not, if I imagined it or not, it was extremely significant for me, and it changed my behavior overnight. So say what you want about all that, but again, invaluable to me. And I hope that this story is of inspiration for you guys. And I really would really love to hear if you guys have had similar experiences, because they are lovely, and I would love to. I've heard about such things in dreams when it comes to Jungian psychoanalysis, dream interpretation, but I haven't heard anybody talk about it like as a vision that came out of nowhere. So if anybody, dream or not, if it has changed the course of your behavior of your life, I would love to hear it in the comments. So please do not hesitate to tell me. Tell each other. This is just as much for me as it is for you guys, and for a community to develop as well. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you guys enjoyed the lovely view, and I hope you guys enjoyed the story, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.